Okay, so hopefully this idea hasn't been done before, but this challenge run is basically a more difficult version of the last challenge run I did. Called it a Dark Souls 3 Nuzlocke challenge, where I only used the weapons, armor, and rings found within each area of the game. This challenge run, though, I will be doing the same thing, but the gear can only be used if it's dropped from an enemy. Yes, this includes NPCs. Also, I just want to point out that while I can use rings, I literally never used any rings throughout the entire playthrough. There are very few rings you can even get through killing enemies in the first place. Now, this challenge run will also be slightly different than the last, because in the last challenge run, I separated the areas up based on how Dark Souls 3 separates areas, which is via the bonfire teleport system. So, for example, I could use the same items in High Wall of Lothric as I could for the Consumed King's Garden due to this rule. I thought the game was being incredibly generous with this, and so I decided to make it more difficult by separating the areas further, as shown on the screen. Another difference is that because this run is going to be using enemy drops, and a majority of the enemy drops are so rare, I allowed myself to use weapons and armor from previous areas if the enemy I collected it from is in the same area I'm going to. So, how will I farm for the weapons when I get to a new area, I hear you ask? Well, I'll use the weapon I was using prior, without any armor, in order to get the new weapon, and then I can continue from there. So, with the rules out of the way, let's hop straight into the run. I started out with the Deprived class because I feel like that's a good starting class for a challenge run, and I never used it in any of my other playthroughs because I've always been a stat min-maxer for all my builds in the past. Now, I wasn't sure how I should start off killing Gundyr, since the only enemy drop weapon you can get in the starting location is a Cleric Sacred Chime. I can't really use that to kill Gundyr, so I could either use my fists or use my starting weapon, since I haven't technically gotten a starting weapon yet. Well, after getting 5 consecutive parries without getting hit, 7 altogether since we're counting here, and I still didn't even get close to a second phase, I decided screw it, this is not a fist-only run, so I ended up going with my club to kill him, since technically that is within my rules. Since we haven't officially gotten an enemy drop weapon yet, I'll use my prior weapon, in this case my starting weapon, to kill enemies trying to get a weapon drop. Now, I understand that some of you might ask why I didn't just use the giant crystal lizard to kill Gundyr, and the very simple explanation is that I didn't feel like spending hours trying to get all of that to work, and then failing like I've seen other people do. So, while yes, I know it's possible, I don't exactly feel like torturing myself trying to get that all set up. Now that we're done with the tutorial boss, we can go to the High Wall of Lothric. Beautiful place that it is, filled with all sorts of wonderful sights like giant pussmen, dragons, and even a mimic. Speaking of mimics, I decided to start off this area in fashion by using the dragon to kill my enemies for me. Specifically, killing the mimic so that I can get the deep battle axe. Surprisingly, I got a super rare drop from the mimic, the Symbol of Avarice, which is going to help out tremendously with farming later. But for now, all it did was cause me to get killed by the dragon without actually getting to pick up the weapon I needed. No worries though, because I can just go back to where the mimic was originally at and pick up the weapon I needed. No worries necessary. Now I hear you saying obviously he will kill the knights for their armor next, and yes, dear viewer, you are correct, but not next. No. Not before killing Vort. That would be tedious running back and forth from any bonfire other than Vort's, so we need to kill him first. Now I hear you saying, but Todithan, you're trash, you couldn't even kill Gundyr with fists. Now you're gonna try and kill Vort without armor? Well, to that I say a bad weapon, my friend, is everything, but having armor, who cares? No one cares. You know, it's just like what Sun Tzu would always say. A great offense is a great defense. And also like what Gandhi would always say. Violence is never the answer. It is a question, and the answer is always yes. Yeah, that's right. I bet you've never seen anybody else have an epic soundtrack over their fight with Mort before, but now you can say you've seen that. And I mean, hey, it was hitless too, but so is most people's fights against Mort. So now that we've taken the trash out, not me, we're fine to start grinding for some Lothric armor and a Lothric Knight weapon. Now this is essentially the most important grind because I will be using this armor and weapon for at least 3 other boss fights. There's only one other weapon I used for 3 boss fights. Would have been 4 if the wiki was correct and didn't lie to me, but we'll get to it when we get to it. Okay, now that we've gotten all the armor and weapons we needed, we're moving on to the Undead Settlement, where I've got to find a weapon before anything else. Lucky for me, I've got the perfect one in mind. We're going all the way to the very end of the area so that I can kill the Boreal Outrider Knight for his sword, the Irithyll Straight Sword. And now, with weapon in hand, I say, who needs armor? While also coincidentally getting an armor drop anyways, but, you know, regardless, we are making our way towards Greatwood. Now, believe it or not, I did actually die twice to Greatwood. Yes, I know, I'm never beating the trash allegations, but I actually had never seen the move he used to kill me the first time before. And the second time I died, well, okay, maybe I am just a little bit trash, but, like they say, third time's the charm, and this irrelevant boss is good and gone, like a splinter being removed from my foot. And we are moving on. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we have finally hit the Corvian crap hole, where I will need to farm for our next weapon that will be used 3 times in the future. Should have been 4. How could you betray me like this, Wiki? So, the first weapon that drops for me is the Corvian Great Knife, and we are rocking with it going forward. And so now we make our way over to the Crucifixion Woods, where we'll tackle our next boss, the Crystal Sage. And I'll be real with you, it's at this point that I start to have a realization. You know, I've invested so much into luck for grinding, I don't really have a lot in any of my other stats. I'm pretty weak right now. But, you know, I disregard this thought because I'm about to kill the Crystal Sage on my first try, like the irrelevant boss that she... You're joking. You're joking with me. That literally just barely clipped me, and that one-shots me. Dark Souls. You gotta love Dark Souls. After this, I decided to try twice more before saying, you know what? I bet the swamp is looking absolutely lovely this time of year. And I completely lied. The Farron Swamp is never looking lovely. It is in fact always looking awful and horrid, and I hate it here. Luckily for me though, I still get to use the Corvian Great Knife because I can kill dagger Corvians here. Unluckily for me though, it is time for a slog of a grind again. This one took surprisingly longer than the Lothric Knights. I was trying to kill these 2 Dark Wraiths for their armor to make Abyss Watchers easier. Was that really necessary? I'm not sure, but I did it anyways because I thought the armor would look cool and didn't think it would take nearly as long as it did. But after many deaths, both from me and the Dark Wraiths, I got 3 out of 4 of the armor pieces and said, screw it, that's good enough for me. Now honestly, grinding for those drops was the only hard part about this fight because boy oh boy do these knights absolutely love getting stabbed in the back. They just make it so easy. It's so hard to resist just absolutely wrecking these knockoff Artorias wannabes. And now it's finally time for revenge with my slightly better stats and slightly more upgraded dagger. I get to put the Wicked Witch in her place and show her that my dagger is far superior than her ridiculous barrage of spells, and I did not get one-shot this time. Thank God. And now we finally get to enter the Cathedral of the Weaklings. Not gonna lie, this area honestly has a lot of enemy drops that will be very useful for a lot of future areas, so I'm completely fine with whatever drops first. Oh, a Great Mace. Well, that looks cool. I'll use that now and then later for Osiris. 32 strength. Oh, well, it looks like we're saving that for later then. Oh well, so now it's time to farm for whatever I can get. Okay, wow, this is surprisingly taking a while, considering almost every single enemy here can drop a weapon that I can use. Oh, a Thrall Hood. Okay, well that's cool and all, but why did the more rare item drop instead of the weapon? Okay, well after a long time of farming, I finally got, wait for it, the literal worst weapon drop for the area, the Thrall Axe. Now I didn't realize this until I got to the boss, but this weapon is so horrendous. The DPS is abhorrent, and I actually had to leave mid-fight with the deacons so that I could upgrade the weapon more so I wouldn't get cursed to death. That is how terrible the DPS was. A terrible weapon for a ridiculously easy boss, but hey, at least it all worked out in the end. Okay, time for some spooky, scary skeleton action. Originally, I was planning on going for one of the skeleton's weapons for this area, but then I remembered the mimic that drops the black blade and figured, wow, that would actually be perfect. So I very gracefully introduced the mimic to the demon, may or may not have looted his corpse and ran away when the demon was done with him, who's to tell. And so with my newly looted black blade in hand, upgraded to +3, I woke up Wolnir and showed him who the real king is. Truly, an epic fight for the ages. First you got Vort, now you got Wolnir. You guys are truly so spoiled with all the epic music these super difficult bosses are getting. Either way, more good news. It is now time for a lava fun. And by that I mean we are going to put an old man out of his misery and then later on do the same to his son, because here at the Todithan channel we believe in fully eradicating the family tree. Now luckily for us, back at the Fair and Swamp, we actually did get a Rotten Grew curved sword, so we get to use that to take out the old demon fart who's barely even aware where he is. Not gonna lie, his big boom at the end always puts me on edge because of how it can one-shot me since I'm not wearing any armor. That totally didn't happen in my last challenge run, by the way, and I totally don't have a grudge against this boss because of that. I don't know why you would even say that, really. Okay, now it's time for us to enter the true mid-game, and one of the most beautiful places in the whole game, Irithyll. And it's also the place that I get to use the Corvian Great Dagger again because of this little guy right here. I also managed to pick up some Pontiff Knight armor on literally my first drop here, which was just so kind of the locals. So now that, frankly, I'm overgeared for Pontiff, I am ready to treat him like the Abyss Watchers and parry spam him to his second phase. Now, I would try to parry his second phase, but that is just far too annoying to do, so I prefer to get some damage in on him the old-fashioned way, hitting him a little bit, and then running away. Works flawlessly every time, and with that, the Pontiff has been purged. Now comes the truly horrifying part of this run, and I am not just talking about his appearance. Aldrich is already quite possibly my least favorite boss in Dark Souls 3 because of his spammy projectiles, but he is made even more annoying because the only weapon I get to use against him in this area is, wait for it, a great bow. To be more precise, the Dragon Slayer Great Bow. Now I'll be honest, I hardly ever use bows, and I'm pretty certain I've never killed any bosses in Dark Souls 3 with a bow before, let alone a great bow. So I knew this would definitely be interesting. What I didn't realize was what the most annoying part of this fight would be. Can you guess what it is? That's correct. It would be the cost per attempt restriction. You see, in order to just have an attempt at Aldrich, I would need to buy great arrows, enough so that I could kill him. And how much do those arrows cost, you ask? 600 souls. That is ridiculous at this point in the game. So after giving him 3 attempts and running out of souls, I decided, screw it, I'll come back and fight him when I have more souls, and moved on towards our friendly giant friend. Now you might be wondering what I could possibly use against Yorm in this area, and originally I was thinking of using the Eleonora that drops from the hand creatures in the lower area of the Profane Capital. I was also doing Sigurd's quest so I could get his armor to help me tank Yorm's attacks while I whittle him away slowly. It was only halfway through this challenge run that I realized, you know what? I think Sigurd actually drops the Storm Ruler. And oh my god, thank goodness I have been doing his questline thinking, oh, I'm only going to use his armor, when really, he drops the best weapon for Yorm. Oh my god, thank goodness I have been doing his questline, because it would be so much more annoying doing this challenge run without it. It would probably take a good couple minutes of just whittling away at Yorm. But now all I've got to do is sacrifice one beautiful onion man, and we can take down our dear old giant friend. Now we get to go back to the High Wall of Lothric, where I get to use the Lothric gear that we grinded for, that being the Lothric Knight armor, minus the gauntlets for weight reasons, and the Lothric sword, because it was the only weapon that dropped for me. I upgraded it to +6, and unsurprisingly, the Dancer was absolutely no threat at all, and just like Yorm, I eviscerate her on the first try. Now, I know at this point some of you might be expecting me to go back to fight Aldrich, but no, not yet. Instead, we head over to the Consumed King's Garden, where the Great Mace and Cathedral Knight armor we picked up back at the Cathedral are coming in clutch for this area. And yes, I know I could use the Thrall Axe, but no, absolutely not. Why would you ever suggest I use such an atrocious weapon? Please never make that suggestion again. Now, truth be told, I didn't exactly have high hopes for the Great Mace going into this fight either. However, I was very surprised when I actually started fighting Osiris. Oh my god, can this man get staggered by my big old hammer? Like, he can really get staggered. This fight was so easy, and honestly, this might be a controversial take, but I think Osiris is one of the easiest bosses, as long as you just hug his legs and wail on him constantly. Now, with Grandpa Dragon, King of Lothric out of the way, we can make our way back in time to the Untended Graves. Here is where I am unfortunately misled by the wiki. I was planning on using my Corvian Great Dagger to kill Champion Gundyr, but I could not find any dagger-wielding Corvians here, only staff and scythe Corvians. So I figured I should farm these guys to either prove that non-dagger-wielding Corvians can in fact drop daggers, or farm for a scythe that I can use. Now, I actually got a staff to drop first, but I can't use that, so who cares? But after far too many attempts at farming, I finally got a scythe to drop. Of course, not a dagger. I figured it wouldn't happen. And after upgrading the scythe to +5, I made my way on over to the champion. Oh my god, another full boss fight with music? I know, you guys are so spoiled. Now, I know exactly what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, wow, Todithan, you're so trash. How did you struggle so much with that fight? Now, I completely understand. And I will just say, wait until my next challenge run video. I'm doing an SL1 challenge run after this. Just wait until you see that fight, because, oh my god, did I have to actually get good at his fight. So just look forward to that if you thought that was trash. Just look forward to that. Okay, well, I've had it too easy up until this point, so it's back to the boss. It sucks the literal joy out of me, and even the very gods. That's right, we're back in Anor Londo, facing off against Aldrich. Now, believe it or not, after a couple attempts, I actually had to leave again to get more souls for arrows, which I did by running through Lothric Castle. But after entirely far too many attempts, I actually learned a couple of things that made this fight a lot more bearable. First is that I should immediately get some pot shots off on the boss when I go through the fog wall initially. Second, I learned that you can actually pretty easily avoid the arrows by running around the pillars in a circle, even when the pillars are broken. I never actually knew this before and would always just hide behind the pillars to avoid the arrows in the past. Let me know how you guys always chose to dodge his arrows. I'm actually curious how many people actually knew about this. Third is that despite what you might think, it is actually way more beneficial to get up close and personal with Aldrich rather than far away, because you can get way more damage off when you bait Aldrich into using close range attacks rather than keeping your distance with him. It was through all of this that I finally managed to beat Aldrich, taking a whole 9 attempts, the longest it's taking me to beat a boss this entire run. And now we get to go back to Lothric Castle, home to dragons, knights, and pussmen. Who cares about those, though, when you get to fight against an inanimate hunk of armor? Did I say inanimate hunk of armor? Sorry, I meant to say flying birds of destruction, because those are the only scary part of this fight. Dragon Slayer armor absolutely never stood a chance against my Lothric loadout. Okay, now you guys know what time it is. It's time for the final Lord of Cinder. Or should I say Lords of Cinder, because now it's time for the Twin Princes. I get to use the same weapon here due to there being knights in the Grand Archives, and I also get to implement some Outrider Knight armor into my build thanks to this little guy right here. Now, while the princes did unfortunately manage to kill me once, I made sure to rectify that mistake pretty quickly by taking them out in my second attempt, redeeming myself from my past humiliation and ending my task of hunting down the previous Lords of Cinder. Oh yeah, that's right. We have another boss fight sped up with epic music. You know, we're getting to the end of the game. There's going to be a lot harder bosses, so expect it coming forward. And now it's DLC time! Starting with Champion's Gravetender. Now, I have a confession to make. I don't like this boss. I hate this boss. I hate when I don't deal enough damage and I have to deal with getting ganked by 2 enemies. I love the smooth dance that plays out when you have an epic one-on-one fight with a solo boss, and nothing frustrates me more than when I get wombo comboed to death by a gank boss. But no need to fret, I managed to stomp out this dastardly duo and mark their graves with my Onyx Blade, which, fun fact, is the only weapon I get to use in this DLC. Also, you might have noticed that I have on 3 out of 4 of the follower armor. Well, I grinded for 3 out of 4 because I figured, you know, that would be good enough. I don't need the gauntlets, and you know, it would be better to just spend my time attempting to fight the bosses. Well, while that worked out great against the Gravetender, an annoying but not difficult fight, Frieda's an entirely different story. Oh boy! If you thought 9 attempts was a lot against Aldrich, Frieda absolutely wrecked me. I don't know if it was because I didn't invest heavily in my faith in Int, so the Onyx Blade didn't deal a lot of damage, or if it was because I had slower and heavier attacks than I've been used to, but I just struggled against this boss again and again. I would die to this boss. It was embarrassing. I actually counted up how many times I died to each phase, and do you want to take a guess on which phase I died the most on? The first phase. Out of 26 attempts, over half of those deaths were all in the first phase. I died 14 times to the first phase. Do you have any idea how bad you have to be to die that many times to first phase Fried? It's kind of impressive in its own right, really. Now, In my second attempt, I actually did super good, getting to third phase freed with 12 Estus, the best condition I will be in for all of my third phase freed fights. You want to take a guess how this attempt ended? Like an absolute moron, I rushed at her after her phase transition, took a whole bunch of damage, and died. Disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. Now, after this I thought, oh, you know, that wasn't so bad. I should be able to easily get back to the third phase and have another go. You want to guess how many times I died in the third phase? 3 times. That means I only got to the third phase 4 times in total out of 26 attempts. I could have gotten freed in 2 attempts, but because of my hubris, it ended up taking 13 times as many attempts. Now, I actually found a cool little exploit that would only work occasionally, but when it did, let me start off the second phase pretty well. What I would do is use my weapon art immediately after the second phase cutscene, and it would cause Freed to rush over to me, or I could wail on her for damage. Now, like I said, this wouldn't always work, but most of the time it would always set me up in an advantageous position for the second phase. Now, I mentioned my stats earlier, and for my first 12 attempts, I still had 25 luck in my stats, which was a waste of 15 points. Up until this point, I didn't want to reallocate my points because I thought it would be cool to beat the game without reallocating my stats like last challenge run. But after struggling for so long, I decided I no longer cared and got rid of those luck points. And now with a better build, I still struggled, but arguably less so. Now, do you want to guess how long it took me to get back to the third phase? My 21st attempt. That's right, for 19 attempts, I was just waiting around in the muck that is Freed's first and second phase. But after a couple consistent attempts getting to Freed's final phase and getting more comfortable with her moveset, I finally had my golden run. Thank God that is over. Now, just like I said for the Gundyr fight, you know, that might not be the prettiest looking fight, but don't you worry. If you're wanting to see a much more beautiful fight, just wait until I'm finished editing my SL1 run, because, oh my God, did it take more attempts than 26 attempts for the SL1 run? Just look forward to that. Okay, now we get to move on to the easiest boss fight in the game, Ancient Wyvern. Now, this boss, unlike Iudix Gundyr, I can do with fist and without armor, so I guess I'm back to being a god tier gamer, huh? Speaking of gods, it's time for the Nameless King. Now, I actually struggled a fair bit against this guy in my last challenge run. It made me get pretty good against him, honestly. So while last time I chose to use the Dragon Slayer Spear, I had 3 options this time. Either the Dragon Tooth you get from killing Havel, the Drakeblood Greatsword you get from killing the Drakeblood Warrior, or Ricard's Rapier you get from killing Prince Ricard. I decided to go with Ricard's Rapier since it has a nice and quick attack, and I like being able to get quick hits in when I dodge. So I upgraded it to +10 and fused it with Dark since TNK is weak to Dark and King of Storms neither resists nor is weak to it. Seemed like a good option rather than taking just Lightning for King of Storms or Fire for TNK. And with my weapon upgraded, it took me a good 5 attempts to kill TNK. But that was all the time I needed in order to get used to the weapon and its attack range in order to effectively take the Nameless King down once and for all. When I killed him armorless last challenge run, it felt so good, and now it just feels like what's expected. DLC time part 2! Now, since they have Lothric Knights here, you know what that means. It's the last time we get to use our Lothric Sword and Armor. Now, surprisingly, I actually died 3 times before getting this kill, but hey, as long as you get Mr. Fire and his Laser Demon Prince over the other, more annoying to fight one, the fight's pretty easy. I made sure to reunite this fiery little guy with his old man, 6 feet under, right where they both belong. And now, we're down to the final 3 DLC bosses and final 4 bosses left in the run. And we actually have a choice of which weapon we get to use going forward. We could either use Leto's Great Hammer, or we could use the Ringed Knight Paired Greatsword, and I decided I want to go with the Paired Greatsword because, even if they've been nerfed since they first came out, they just look and feel so cool. As for armor, I lucked out getting to use Iron Dragon Slayer armor. For whatever reason, FromSoft thought it would be a brilliant idea to put a reskin of a boss just wandering around in a far-off corner of the DLC. Thank God for that, because I would have died a lot more to Gael if I was armorless. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves though, because the first boss up on the chopping block is Half-Light. And honestly, I'm not sure if Half-Light deserves to be called a boss, but we treated him like the throwaway NPC he is, and absolutely demolish him on our first attempt. Now, I could do Midir first, but I always feel like doing Gael next because he's the hardest and also most fun boss in Dark Souls 3. It is just such a beautifully orchestrated fight. The music, the visuals, the flow of the battle like a dance, it's incredible. Now, this one actually took me 7 attempts. The third attempt I got so close, but not enough. And the final attempt, I mean, just look. Just look at what a climactic final boss fight this was. Look at that, absolutely down to the wire. Little bit of health remaining, both of us, but we don't care. We clutch it up and we deliver the final blow. Let's go! And now it's Midir time. Now, I'm not going to say Midir isn't cool in his own right. He totally is. He's one of the best dragon fights in Soulsborne. Looks cool, fight feels cool. However, he is definitely not a hard boss. Midir is super easy. I got him in the first attempt, like I always do, but I would just like to point out one thing and see if anybody else agrees with me. Midir feels like the groundwork laid out for Baal in the Elden Ring DLC. Like, after fighting and getting good at fighting Baal, and the other more difficult to fight dragons in Elden Ring like Placidusax, Midir just feels so easy, and like he was expanded on and made more difficult through future dragon fights. Which is awesome and totally cool, and you can see it through the similar moves they use, but Midir is never going to be a challenge unless you go out of your way to make it so. I mean, in my mage build in the past, I even killed this guy using nothing but Pestilent Mist, which is pretty fun, and you guys should definitely try sometime. And I might even try it in a future challenge run. Okay, that's enough rambling. We're on to the final boss of this challenge run, Soul of Cinder. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering what I would do for this boss, since there is literally no enemies for weapons to drop from in this final area, But for those of you who saw my first challenge run, I'm going to do the same thing I did for that challenge run because I thought it'd be a fitting conclusion to the type of run I'm doing. I'm going to pick a random weapon that I've picked up and use that against the final boss. Now, really, this is the exact same dilemma that we faced against IUDEX Gundyr at the very beginning. We could either do it fist only, or we could stay within the spirit of the run, which is to just use a random weapon and not really have any armor and duke it out. Which, like I mentioned, I feel fits the spirit of the run more than doing a fist only, no armor run, because that is a lot more challenging. Maybe one day, but not today. So I picked the Great Mace for no other reason than because I've been having a fun time using quick attacking weapons, and so I figured using a big, heavy, slow attacking weapon would be more challenging. And it definitely was. I died 5 times before getting the kill. It took a bit of adjusting to my heavy weapon and figuring out when it was safe to attack, but like all bosses, I inevitably took down my foe, and I claimed my spot as the rightful ruler of this challenge run. I just want to go ahead and give a big thank you to all of you who stuck around until the end. As a fun little bonus, at the end of my videos, I'll go ahead and show you the stats I made of the weapons and armor I used for each boss, as well as how many attempts I had for each boss. In case any of you were wondering about the previous run I mentioned, or if you wanted to see the challenge runs live, I have all the VODs uploaded on my VODs channel, linked in the description, TodithanVODs, and I also have my first challenge run uploaded into 8 different parts on this channel. Let me know what you guys like better between uploading one big video like this or uploading multiple smaller videos of highlights from the run like I did before. And if you guys enjoy this style of content, go ahead and subscribe or leave a like. It helps me know what you guys enjoy and what you think I should do more of. If you have any suggestions or ideas for other videos or runs, go ahead and let me know. At the time of me writing the script, I just finished my next challenge run, which is the hardest one I've done yet, an SL1 run of Dark Souls 3. Look forward to that video coming out in the future. I definitely had a lot better looking fights against bosses because I was forced to get a lot better. Either way, I just wanted to sincerely say thank you for watching. This was my first big video I made, and I genuinely hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.